Director Corbett
Here.
and Director Wieskamp,
Here.
Director Coffey,
Here.
Director Waspy,
Here.
Director Eccles,
Here.
and President Rosario.
Here. Great.
And in terms of executive team, IGM Carol Victor, Deputy General Manager Alvarez, CFO AGM Ocker. All the assistant general managers are here. Christina Kelchner, Jim O'Connor, Carol Johnson, Chief Chiobaro, and all the other staff members are here. So all 7 board members are present and accounted for.
We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If Director Coffey, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. And Director Coffey, did you remember your acknowledgement for today?
Sure. Would you like me to do that now?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, thank you, President Rosario. By your suggestion, I will acknowledge the land that I'm on right now, attending today's Zoom meeting. This is important as our park district, as stewards, highly value the history and culture of our indigenous peoples, communities, and what they teach us as we, in turn, manage their space and their lands. So my home here in Hercules is located in the tribal homeland of the Karkin, an Ohlone tribe whose territory for thousands of years encompassed the south and north side of the Carquinez Strait. So as you all join me in my hometown of Hercules today through this Zoom connection, welcome to Karkin Ohlone territory.
Great, thank you. Today's regular meeting is held in accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order allowing for board members to participate remotely. And we are also providing a live audio and video streaming and have provided the public the opportunity to submit written comments and call in for public comments or an item on the staff report to call in and leave a voice message. Do we have any public comments?
Yes, President Rosario, but just a brief rendition of how people can
Yes, please.
send in their public comments. They can do it via email to ybarrel@ebparks.org. They can actually leave a voicemail at 510-544-2016, or they can join in at this meeting and you can be recognized. I'm not sure, I'm looking here, I see a hand for an Eric Olafson. So if you are here for a public comment, just give me 1 second. And that's how you do the public comments. We do have, actually we have 2 additional public comments. So I'm going to read the public comment that I have from Chris Newey.
Okay.
And then I'm going to call on Eric Olafson and then Jonathan Goodwin. Keeping in mind, gentlemen, that you have 3 minutes. So I'm going to read this one first. And it was from Christopher Newey, and it reads, President Rosario, Board Directors, my name is Chris Newey, President of AFSCME. I am writing you today to talk about ongoing issues that AFSCME has had over the years. As you are aware, there has been ongoing turnover in the Human Resources Department, with the biggest impact being the changes of Chief Human Resource Officer. This has not only been disruptive in developing constructive relationships to advance the union's and the district's goal, but has also been disruptive with reinterpretation of policies and contract language. It seems every time the district hires a new chief of HR, the department head begins making changes and applying new interpretations of the AFSCME Park District's MOU. Many of these reinterpretations are a contradiction to past practice. Some changes already had lengthy discussion from both parties to come to an understanding, only to have a new chief of HR reinterpret the same item a year or two later. Our hope is that the newly hired chief of HR will take the time, meet with our union to discuss changes before implementing and/or research past practices before making contract language interpretations. We do have an ongoing issue negatively affecting employees right now. This is the district's negotiations team stance on union observation during negotiations. For as long as anyone can remember, union members have been able to observe negotiations with approval of using their personal leave, such as comp time or vacation time. The district is now taking the narrow perspective that union members can only do this on leave without pay. The contract language states that the time should be unpaid, but there are other places in the contract that mention unpaid time is interpreted that mention unpaid time is interpreted that unpaid time is time beyond regular working time, and vacation or comp time could fall into this category. Why does the district care if an employee is using their vacation or comp time if the time off is already approved by a manager? What harm does the district face by continuing the longstanding practice? We will be grieving this issue, but employees are being unfairly obstructed from using a contractual right in the meantime for that reason. Please speak with your negotiations team about this issue. Thank you for your time. Chris Newey, President of AFSCME. So the next public speaker is going to be Eric Olafson. Eric, you have 3 minutes. And you can begin speaking now. I don't see you.
Hi, my name is Eric Olafson. Thank you for taking comments. I live in Canyon. And I noticed on the agenda, today's agenda, that in the closed session on item D, there are 3 parcels being negotiated. I know you probably can't talk about the negotiations, but we're just in Canyon, we're kind of interested in why you're buying in holdings in Canyon that are non-contiguous to Sibley or Huckleberry. Are there any planning documents that we can see that might be public that we can you can refer to, that we can understand what your intentions are in buying or purchasing these parcels? There's one 40-acre parcel, and then there's one much smaller parcel. Just curious as to what the Park District's plans are, and if there are any planning documents that we can look at. That's my question.
Thank you. Jonathan Goodwin.
Hi there. Good afternoon to everybody. I was likewise concerned with the same topic and interested in getting some response to that. I was hoping to respond to the response to Mr. Olafson's question, but that didn't work. So, I also am wondering why the district, I mean, I assume it's for trail development, but would like to know why these are being purchased. And what is particularly odd is that they're actually in holdings in around East Bay Mud property. I was concerned why the Park District would be buying such things, and if you're coordinating with East Bay Mud. Secondly, if you don't mind, I don't know, maybe this is a special request. I haven't been keeping up with your the progress with the property that you guys had bought near to your headquarters there to put police, fire, and maintenance and so forth. And I was just wondering if you could give just a real quick sense of where that's at in the planning and construction stage. And again, I wish you all a good afternoon and a happy meeting when I'm gone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin.
Great. I think, go ahead, Carol.
Hi, Carol Victor, Interim General Manager, Mr. Goodwin, Mr. Olafson. So, of course, and I think you alluded to it, closed session negotiations are confidential. But I would refer you to our master plan, and that the Park District's longstanding practice is to authorize purchases of property in open session. So if we do in fact acquire these parcels, it would be done in an open session, and we would be more forthcoming with information. But in the meantime, I will direct you to our master plan. And with regards to the building across the street, I believe we'll be coming forward to, I think, our board executive committee in the near term with an update on that project.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. So do any board members have any questions about our meeting procedures coming up? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve.
Move we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Director Lane and Director Wieskamp. Great, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, may you please take a roll call?
Yes, President Rosario. Director Waspy?
Bye.
Director Corbett?
Aye.
Director Eccles?
Aye.
Director Coffey?
Aye.
Director Lane?
Aye.
Director Wieskamp?
Aye.
And President Rosario.
Aye.
It is unanimous
Great.
of the agenda. Approval of the agenda.
And then before we go to, can't follow on that. I can't follow on my phone.
We're going to go to item C,
Yes. Special update, thank you.
Yeah. Interim General Manager Report.
I'm a Luddite, I'm sorry.
That's all right. President Rosario, Carol Victor, Interim General Manager. I'll be brief. I know we're starting late and we have a large agenda to accomplish. This item on the agenda is set aside for the General Manager to give an update on COVID-19 and the state of the Park District emergency. We continue to be in a state of an emergency and subject to place restrictions throughout the state. The good news on the COVID-19 front is that California's positivity rate is the lowest it's been since November. The bad news is this November was still a high positivity rate, higher than it had been in the summer months. But we are seeing a positive direction in that rates are going down. Interestingly, a mass vaccination site is opening today at the Coliseum in coordination with FEMA. I think there's 100 mass vaccination sites being established throughout the country. And they're saying it's the largest military deployment for a civilian undertaking in the United States history. So even larger than the response to Hurricane Katrina. Unfortunately, vaccination supplies are still in short supply. We continue to advocate that our frontline workers be given priority for vaccinations. And we will continue that effort. And we've done our internal organizing effort so that we are prepared to get our employees vaccinated as soon as we are told that they're eligible and that their supplies available. One thing of note is that the CDC has issued new guidance on mask wearing, and they're encouraging that folks wear good quality masks and even double mask to prevent the spread of COVID-19. We have sent out some information on that. We'll continue to send out information to our staff and educate them on COVID-19 prevention practices. One concern is with the spring weather that we're looking towards, and and the loosening of restrictions that people are becoming less vigilant about COVID-19 prevention. And we really, really have to work to overcome that complacency. So we are continuing to do our training, we do inspections, and then we do contact tracing whenever there's COVID exposures, and we try to determine how that exposure occurred and put in preventative steps to prevent a reoccurrence. So it's to the extent that our workforce is listening, is just more important than ever that people stay vigilant and wear their masks and wear the best quality mask available to you. And that's my update. I can answer any questions that the board may have.
Any questions? Director Waspy.
Well, just has there been any update from the county as to whether or not we be bumped up or moved into a different tier, or if we might be able to take our employees down and get them vaccinated?
Yeah, I know we've been in active discussions with the county. I think right now they're still continuing to say that we're in phase 1C, I believe, as a government workers. And we will continue to advocate as hopefully as supplies of vaccine become more available, then there'll be a greater opportunity to get our folks vaccinated. It's definitely our highest priority.
Great. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your report. I have a request for next meeting. If you could give us an update on the numbers for our employees from the EOC, that would be great.
Sure.
Thank you. And now we are at our section D, our consent calendar. Yes.
President Rosario, Carol Victor, just before the board takes action on the consent calendar, I did want to, the Brown Act requires before the board takes action on highly paid executive compensation, that there be an announcement of the terms of that compensation. The board is being asked to approve bringing in Allison Cook as the Chief Human Resources Officer at Step E of the management pay range MGO7. We're asking to bring her in at Step E, and that salary equals $197 and $433 per year.
And that is item
C.
See on the agenda,
Great.
on the consent agenda.
Actually, I was just going to ask to have that pulled just so that we can meet her.
Okay.
Good idea.
Okay.
Great. So, Madam Clerk, are there any items that have questions?
Yes, there are. So we're pulling item C. Director Corbett would like to pull item D, and then Directors Lane and Rosario both had questions. All of those are answered, except I'm thinking that Director Lane may want a more in-depth conversation with hers. Item Q regarding the Point Pinole Regional Shoreline. Because if so, staff is prepared for that. So I don't know.
Any other directors have questions on any of the items in consent? Seeing none, we'll go with Director Corbett. And your item.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I know this is an item that would merit consent and approval by all of the board members, but I thought it was important to pull this item, the resolution of the East Bay Regional Park District recognizing February 2021 as Black History Month, off the consent calendar. So we would have just a moment to reflect on the importance of this. I appreciate, under the leadership of our president and our IGM, that we are passing a resolution, I think for the first time since I've been on the board, to recognize this extremely important month. And I would ask all to read the resolution in its entirety and its historic telling of this very important time of the year. But also would like to just stop for a moment and congratulate and appreciate. We make history every day in the Park District. So to congratulate and appreciate all of the people who work now and who have worked overtime for the Park District, African-American employees who mean so much to our district and contribute so much. And, obviously very, very fond of our clerk, Yolanda Burial Knight, as one of those leaders in our district. So very happy Black History Month to everyone. And I look forward to celebrating the rest of the month by celebrating the achievements of our employees.
It's wonderful. I would like us to go ahead and read it aloud. Director Corbett, I'm going to go by my Brady Bunch window here. I'm going to start with Director Corbett, and then Director Coffey, and then Director Wieskamp for the first 2 whereas.
Would you like me to start?
Yes, please.
So this is the resolution of the East Bay Regional Park District recognizing February 2021 as Black History Month. And the first whereas reads, whereas Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the son of formerly enslaved parents, became an African-American historian, author, and founder of the Association for the Study of African-American Life. And
Director Coffey.
Whereas Dr. Woodson started Negro History Week in February 1926, which consisted of activities and commemorations focusing on Black history for 1 week, which included the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. And
Whereas in 1976, President Gerald R. Ford encouraged Americans to observe Black History Month. In subsequent years, Presidents Carter and Reagan continued to issue presidential messages honoring Black History Month. And
Director Lane, and then Director Eccles, and then Director Wasby.
Since 1996, U.S. presidents have issued annual proclamations for Black History Month on the many accomplishments of Black people that were neglected and omitted from American history.
And whereas Black people's narratives are integrated into the fabric of the United States and throughout the nation, and the contributions of Black American citizens, inventors, scientists, artists, athletes, inventors, educators, attorneys, military, and doctors have been recognized annually during the month of February. And
whereas Black history is American history, and
go ahead and read the second one. That was so short.
whereas on June 16th, 2020, by resolution 2020-6-132, the Board of Directors denounced racism and pledged solidarity with Black people and of all people of color.
And whereas the Board of Directors again reaffirmed the East Bay Regional Park District's commitment to promoting racial equity and removing barriers to access in our parks and programs in our workplace. And back to the beginning, Director Corbett.
whereas the East Bay Regional Park District celebrates together with our community and colleagues in honoring the contributions of Black people to our country, our East Bay community, and Park District.
Director Coffey.
now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Directors of the East Bay Regional Park District recognizes February 2021 as Black History Month.
be it further resolved, the general manager is hereby authorized and directed on behalf of the district and in its name to execute and deliver such documents and to do such acts as may be deemed necessary or appropriate to accomplish the intentions of this resolution.
Thank you all very much. I want to congratulate our current Black employees, as well as those in the past. They're part of our DNA. They're part of the bones of the Park District, and I appreciate all the service that they've accumulated and performed with incredible diligence and sacrifice. So thank you all. Good idea. Thank you, Director Corbett, for pulling that. And then next is Director Lane. You had a comment on item Q.
Yes, this was item Q, which is the completion funds for the water trail site at Point Pinole. And I think, I'm really very excited about the water trail. It's not something that I don't think I will ever have an opportunity to do, given my issues of getting in and out of a kayak. But I think it's very interesting how many sites we have at the Park District. And I'm wondering, Jeff, if you were able to show us a map of those today. That's what I would request.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Jeff Rasmussen, Assistant Finance Officer. I will attempt to share my screen and share that map that you requested, Director Lane. Yeah. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's a quick map and list of the completed Bay Water Trail sites, including the project that's proposed for approval today, and then 3 remaining sites that are probably the higher priorities for future sites for the district.
All right, I think that's very impressive. We've got 11 that are completed in the East Bay, and some of them would require a special approval if people want to spend the night. And all of them require skill on the water and an enjoyment of our bay. So thank you very much for showing us that, Jeff.
No problem. Thanks for asking.
Great. And we have one more item. Item C, if we can get an introduction to our new Chief of HR, that would be wonderful. Yes, Allison.
Would you like me to do that, Director?
Yes, please. That would be great.
Since I'm probably the most enthusiastic about her arriving. If approved by the board, she would begin on March 8th. Her name is Allison Cook. I told her she spells it wrong with the Y, so forgive her that. But she is currently with the City of Oakland as the Assistant HR Director. She, before that, was the Employee Relations Manager there and had been brought into the council's office in 2014. So she's had the last almost 7 years there. And as you can imagine, that's a very dynamic labor environment. So she has handled a number of very difficult situations there and has an excellent reputation for very cooperative labor relations. It was a powerful thing to me that the president of the Police Officers Association wanted to be one of her references. I think that speaks highly. Before that, she was 10 years partner with Burnham Brown in Oakland. So she has just a long legacy of public sector employment law practice. What else? She got her law degree and her undergraduate degree from USF. So she's definitely a local gal. And I didn't know her personally before this process, but I know quite a few colleagues in the Bay Area who have, and they all speak very, very highly of her. I think we're very lucky to have found her.
Great.
So I highly recommend approval of this item.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. I think we are in line for a motion and a second for.
Move the consent calendar.
President Rosario, before we do that,
Yes.
on item D that we just, the Black History Month resolution, there is an error. And just before we move that, just want to acknowledge that the fifth whereas, the inventor, there's 2 inventors, so we're going to take one of them out.
Great.
So we're going to approve the consent calendar with edits. So
Thank you for that, catching that. Although, okay.
So moved as corrected.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please take a roll call.
yes, President Rosario, Director Wasfi,
Aye.
Director Corbett,
Aye.
Director Eccles,
Aye.
Director Coffey,
Aye.
Director Lane,
Aye.
Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
President Rosario.
Aye. Unanimous.
Item is
very
unanimously
much.
approved. Corbett.
Okay, now we are moving right along. Number 2, Executive and Legislation Division. Amendment to the East Bay Regional Park District salary schedule to address the findings and implement staff recommendations as a result of the classification and compensation studies for unrepresented management classifications and classifications with a confidential designation, including eliminating the top merit step.
Good afternoon, President Rosario, board members, colleagues, and members of the public. Deputy General Manager, Dr. Ana Alvarez at your service. While I will be leading today's presentation, please note that in your agenda, we should have noted that this item is being brought forward by our Interim General Manager, Carol Victor, our AGM of Finance and Management Services and CFO, Deborah Alker, as well as our Interim Chief Human Resources Officer, Allison Picard. They are here with us and they will be joining us today. They're also available to answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent, thank you.
I'm going to navigate this. So as a way of background, back in 2017, the board of directors provided policy direction to conduct a classification and compensation study in the interest of the employees dedicated to fulfilling the mission of the Park District and in service to the public. With the expectation that there will be tangible outcomes from the study findings, including clear and up-to-date job classifications, as well as compensation that is fair in today's public sector market, understanding that these are very important tools to attract and retain a workforce of excellence, as is called out in our master plan. So by engaging in this process, the board of directors continues to establish district-wide classification and compensation plans for represented as well as unrepresented employees through a transparent public process, starting with the acceptance of the study reports in a public meeting, which took place back in December 1st of 2020. So today's item presents an opportunity for the board of directors to address the study findings for unrepresented employee groups in the management and confidential designations. Also, as a way of context, the Ralph Anderson and Associates reports have identified how each employee group falls within the market. This slide that I'm showing to you brings together all employee groups together to understand findings and summarizes what actions the Park District has already undertaken to address these findings where appropriate. So I'm going to walk you quickly through this slide for the interest of the public to understand why you've seen that slide many times. It's important for the staff who may be watching the presentation, as well as the public, to understand how the bigger picture and how all these employee groups came to be. The board of directors has established a market position pertaining to compensation, plus or minus 5% of the median. So we conducted a benchmarking study to understand total compensation, and we found that for those employees represented by ACME Local 2428, they came in on average as a group 12% below the median, whereas our seasonal employees came in at 17% below the median, and the Police Association came in at 3.3% below the median. Managers and confidentials, which is the two groups that we'll be focusing on today's presentation, the managers came in at 4.5% below the median for steps A through F, as well as the confidential came in at 9.3% above the median, also for steps A and F. The Park District and the board of directors have taken already actions to address some of the findings from these studies for other employee groups, which our goal was to get closer to our market position and also to address any equity adjustments or equity issues pertaining to compensation. And we did that with the extension of $1 million for equity adjustments for ACME Local 2428 represented positions. And by implementing those equity adjustments, on average, the ACME represented employees or positions came in at 9.74% below the median. So there was Together as a group, they moved closer to the median. Whereas for the seasonals, we went ahead through the board director's support, made an action to, again, to get closer to our market target by extending, making some adjustments to the compensation scale. And the outcome was that we got them together as a median to about 5% below the median as a group. And no job is making less than $15 an hour. For the police association, because they came in within market, there was no action needed. They're sitting well at this time. There were some recommendations for future consideration, but nothing to be done immediately. So for today, what we're focusing on for managers and confidentials, we have a goal and we made a commitment to address compensation findings, as well as address the findings pertaining to classification changes. So for today's actions, in terms of compensation, we will be addressing merit compensation, which was not included as we were looking at how the groups fell within the median, because we only looked at steps A through F. And also, there's a recommendation by Ralph Anderson Associates to restructure the MGO 00 range from 2.5% to 5%, which I'll be walking through that in a minute. And we're hoping that with today's board's actions, if approved, that the outcome will be a better aligned compensation structure that aligns better with the market. So here's when we say that we would like to have a better alignment for managers and confidentials. The study did not take into consideration in doing the benchmarking, the merit compensation steps, which are the three last steps on the structure. We know that if we were to take them into account for managers and looking at the benchmarking, if we were to take into account the steps G through I, then the managers, the numbers will be skewed. So we will have managers actually, their compensation coming in at 10.5% above the median, which is about 5.5% above the Park District's market position. That's also true for confidentials. If we were to include merit compensation, it would skew the findings to show that with the three compensation steps or merit compensation steps, the confidentials as a group will be falling in as 24.3 above the median or 19.3 above the market position that has been assigned by the board directors. And again, we're discussing functions and classifications, not necessarily the individuals. That was one of our principles in starting this project. We are very much cognizant of the fact that the people behind these functions, for both managers and confidential, they're giving the very best public service in benefit of the district's mission. We're discussing simply the positions and the classifications so that we can have a compensation plan that's better aligned with the market. So by no means are we disparaging or not valuing the work that's being provided by the people behind the Park District's mission. So let's understand who are the managers behind the mission of the district. These are unrepresented professional employees, public servants who work about a 4 hours a week. They're not eligible to earn overtime. We know that managers actually do far more than 40 hours. They have a 6 annual step increases of 5% each. Those are steps A through F in their compensation structure. And they also have 3 additional merit steps, steps G, H, and I, which is 5% for each, which are earned based on performance and a very specific criteria that's spelled out in an HR merit compensation policy for managers. Managers also receive annual wage adjustments. It could be a cost of living adjustment or more. In the last 4 years, managers and confidentials have received, along with other employees, close to 12% on equity adjustments. So these are the managers and we found in the study that the additional merit-based compensation was not congruent with today's public sector market trends. While merit compensation did exist and was very popular at one point in the public sector market, merit compensation disappeared over time and mostly after the Great Recession in 2008. Today's market actually shows merit-based compensation. You may find it exclusively in city managers' contracts, but not necessarily applied to managers in general in the public sector market. So the trend has changed. So when we talk about employees with a confidential designation, or positions, I should say, with a confidential designation, these are positions, again, that they're not represented. They're unrepresented. They don't work a 40-hour week. In fact, they work here at the district. They're financed to work 37.5 hours a week. They are eligible to earn overtime. So anything past 37.5 hours comes in an hour and at time and a half. That's how they can earn overtime. And they can actually comp their time as well. They also have 6 annual step increases, just like managers. But unlike the managers, the variance or the number in between each step is not 5%, but in fact is 2.5%, mirroring the variance that we find in represented employees with ACME. And those are only for the first 6 steps, A through F. We also know that employees with a confidential designation are eligible to receive annual wage adjustments, which can be a cost of living adjustment or a little bit more than that. Just like all other employees, just like ACME Local 2428 and managers, confidential employees received about a 12% growth in equity adjustments over the last 4 years. The interesting piece here is that Ralph Anderson Associates study found that merit-based compensation, while it exists here, as you can see in the last 3 steps, step G, H, and I, they don't exist. It's an anomaly. It doesn't exist in the public sector market for these types of positions. It's never existed, and it's not, and it doesn't exist. So we know that it's an anomaly. And that's why we're here today with you, trying to find a way to better realign the compensation structure. What we're recommending here is that we removed the top merit step. So dropping merit step I that you can see here and leaving 2 merit steps. By dropping merit step or the top of the merit step, employee current wages will not be reduced, which was one of the principles in our project, since there are currently no employees currently earning wages at step I. So there's no one at that step level. It is a 5% reduction, not in wages, but in fact in earning growth potential. So that's what the consequences of these actions will be. But equally as important, it provides for a new compensation structure for managers and confidentials that drops 1 and keeps 2 merit steps. So we still have merit-based compensation with 2 remaining steps, step G and step IH. And by leaving those 2 steps, step G and step H, it will require new performance criteria to be met for these 2 remaining steps, which we will be bringing back to you as a future amendment to the human resources merit policies for managers and confidentials. And I should say that there are currently, if the question has come up before, there are currently about 13 managers in merit steps, in the merit steps of G and H. So it's about 18% of the managers that are currently receiving merit compensation. And since the last time we spoke to the board, there's 3 managers that moved into merit compensation. And I understand that there's a large number of managers currently at step F that will soon be moving into step G. So understanding what we're bringing here, here's another way of looking at this. We want to have a a balanced approach that takes care of the people that make up the Park District, but it also takes care of the Park District as a public institution. So again, we're recommending a phased approach. And here you can see by keeping 2 merit steps, we are changing the compensation or earning capacity and changing the compensation structure. We will now move the managers into being, if we keep steps G and H, they will be coming together as a group on average, 5.5% above the median, which is only less than 1% above the market position, which is very, very good. So we're meeting your direction, your policy direction to be within that market position. When it comes to the confidentials, by keeping 2 merit steps, we will be bringing them together on average at 19.3% above the median and 14.3% above the market position. And we understand that that may not be enough, but it's a good, healthy first step in addressing the misalignment or how to better align our compensation structure. And this is important because we're hoping to build on our shared values of stewardship of public funds, as well as maintaining competitive, fair, and equitable compensation in delivering the mission of the Park District by the men and women behind the mission. So for today's recommendation, we're looking for the board to adopt a resolution to amend the Park District's salary schedule for unrepresented managers and confidential employee groups effective February the 27th to include the following: accepting the job classification title changes as recommended by the study conducted by Ralph Anderson Associates. Those classification title changes are part of your board material. They are in your attachment. Also, again, restructuring the MGO 00 range from 2.5% to 5% variance between steps so that we can be consistent with the salary range structure for unrepresented managers. And that current range, the MGO 00, is currently assigned to the human resources analyst. And also we're looking at dropping 1 merit step, the top step, for both managers and confidentials. I'm going to stop sharing my screen in case there are any questions by the board. Director Rosario, you're muted.
Forgot I was muted. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Questions from the board? No questions? I don't see Director. Chief CFO Acker.
Thank you, President Rosario, and thank you, Anna, for such a great presentation. I do have a little bit of news that our packet, when we printed it, we did leave out one of the salary tables, unfortunately. And so I'm looking to District Council to tell me how to resolve for that. I believe it is a document that you've seen before or something that you are very aware of, but it did not get printed in the actual packet.
Which one? I have 3 pulled up. Which one did you need?
Let's have Interim General Manager Carol Victor speak, and go ahead and drop your screen, please, Yolanda.
I'm sorry.
Drop your screen, please.
Hi, Carol Victor, Interim General Manager at District Council. And right now I'm wearing my District Council hat. So what I recommend is that the board take the action as adopt the resolution as presented. But because we're required to publicly adopt the salary management schedules to comply with CalPERS rules, I'm going to ask the clerk of the board to bring a republishing of the salary schedule to the next board meeting, just so all our i's are dotted and t's are crossed. But I would recommend you go ahead and take the action in the resolution.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you. I apologize for that.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of opportunity to look at these documents, and I appreciate all the due diligence and the discussion behind it. If I see any further, no, is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Director Wieskamp,
I will make the motion, move forward.
is there a second? Director Lane? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, will you please take a roll call vote, please?
Yes, President Rosario. Director Waspy,
Aye.
Director Eccles,
Aye.
Director Lane,
Aye.
Director Corbett,
Aye.
Director Coffey,
Aye.
Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
and President Rosario.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Good work to all of you. Hard
Thank you,
work.
Director Rosario.
Very hard.
Okay, and now we are at section 3, Finance and Management Services. Authorization of a grant application for the federal build grant and district-wide trails.
I believe Eric Fueller is going to present this item. I'm not sure. My notes.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's correct.
I'm here to introduce the item, and then Katie Hornbeck will be presenting the bulk of it. Eric Fueller, Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs, and the Better Utilizing Investment to Leverage Development grant program is the successor to the Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery, the TIGER program from the Federal Department of Transportation, for which the district received $10.2 million about 10 years ago. We had thought about applying for a build grant beginning after the 2018 election, once the Congress changed to better benefit the Park District's interests. Then we went to Washington, D.C. in 2019 and met with the Department of Transportation. And we realized, and the board, most of the board was there, we realized we didn't have all the data we needed for a competitive grant application. And then we also realized that we needed to provide more input to the board in terms of the list of potential projects. So we took another year off, and or didn't take it off, but we took another year to analyze the different projects. So we have a 2-phase process going on, which Katie will explain to you with regard to collecting data for a very robust list of 21 projects that we will call down to the most competitive and the most appropriate for application should we decide to move forward. Just a side note, and then I'll hand it over to Katie, is that Lisa Baldinger and I, along with our advocate, Peter Umhofer, had a conversation with the Department of Transportation this morning and gleaned some very useful information that I think will help us in our application, but it does sound like it would be received favorably. So we look forward to the presentation, Katie, and I'll be available for questions after.
Thanks, Eric. Hopefully everyone can see my PowerPoint that I've just pulled up. I'm going to get started. Well, hello and good afternoon to the Board of Directors. I'm Katie Hornbeck, Grants Manager. And as Eric mentioned, I'm going to go over some key components of the build grant. And more specifically today, we're here to essentially get authorization to apply for the build grant. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce, we have a great project team that's part of this process. Eric and Lisa from Legislative and Government Affairs, as well as Yuli Padmore. Myself and Jeff Rasmussen coming in from Finance and Management Services, and then Brian Holt, Chief of Planning, Trails and GIS, and Sean Dugan, Trails Program Manager, and then Lisa Gorgon, Chief of Design and Construction. So we've been meeting on a bi-weekly basis for the last few months, getting ready for this build grant. So what is BUILD? As Eric mentioned, this program was previously known as the TIGER program, or Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery Discretionary Grant. We were successful with TIGER 2 in 2010, where we received or were awarded approximately $10 million for 4 to 6 different projects. So that program is now called BUILD. And there are several key criteria for the BUILD program. We will have more the published BUILD criteria will come out with the notice of funding opportunity, and that deadline is the end of April. But these are sort of their 5 overarching key criteria that we know will be there. So one being safety. Does this project reduce potential serious injuries or fatalities? Traffic congestion. So does this project improve commute time for drivers? Regional economic benefit. Does this project connect people to job, services, and education? For regional connectivity, is this project going to connect to an additional means of transportation like BART? And then readiness, or what we sometimes will say shovel ready, so can this project get done in the amount of time for the grant performance period, which we anticipate being about 3 years. And then finally, there is a 20% match requirement for each project. So that will certainly weigh into the sort of final project list that we create. With the BUILD criteria, and Lisa or Eric could maybe speak to more of this, but it is expected to shift this year slightly with the new administration. So that might include more climate-friendly language. There's possibly an emphasis with innovation and partnership being support criteria that will be important for us to consider. And then as well as Department of Transportation prioritizing racial equity in climate change, which I've already mentioned. All right, here's the timeline. So leading up to this point, in the last year and a half or so, a lot of the work has been engaging with different regional partners and with the board and the general manager, and creating, starting to build a project list. And in January, from January to March, we're really doing phase 1, which is the analysis and project evaluation. So we are working with a consultant. We provided them our list of projects, and they are looking at a variety of factors to analyze. So within the those 5 BUILD grant criteria that I mentioned earlier. So they're looking at historical collision data, they're looking at demographics and the Cal Enviro screen data, looking at community survey data that's going to start looking at the number of people these different projects might serve and what their current transportation behavior looks like, as well as that connectivity component. So that's what they're analyzing right now. We anticipate early March to have that information available to us. And once we have that, we'll be able to start whittling down our final project list. So that's where we are right now, kind of this phase 1. And then here today to get board authorization to submit an application to BUILD. In March, we'll be finalizing that project list. And then between March and May, we'll be preparing the grant application. There's not a deadline set for it yet, but the deadline for the Department of Transportation to release their notice of funding opportunity is April 26th. So we know for sure it will be announced by then. And from that point, we typically get 30 to 60-ish days to submit the application. So the actual application submittal will be sometime between May and June. And that's on that one. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to talk about the project map and ward distribution.
Thank you, Katie. Good afternoon, board members. Lisa Baldinger, Legislative and Policy Management Analyst. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank you all for your time. Eric and I had the honor of sitting down with each of you twice to have a one-on-one conversation about your priorities as we approach this application, using what we learned in our in-person 2020 February visit with the Department of Transportation, and also the understanding, as Katie shared, we had confirmed from the Department of Transportation this morning that the criteria or the priorities of the Department of Transportation will be shifting slightly under the new leadership. So really prioritizing equity as well as climate change resiliency. And so as you can see on the map, and the next map, which Eric will walk us through, is looking at congressional districts. Before you, we have our ward breakouts, and you might be able to see some that came out of our discussions with you. So the full scope of the Point Muladee Bay Trail extension was added to our list. The Delta de Anza in Concord was an addition that came out of board discussions, as well as the full Niles Canyon Trail for preliminary engineering. So we were excited to add those to the list, which is now 21 projects that we're looking for the competitiveness. And all projects in the list, I do want to emphasize, are within existing capital improvement plans. So they're projects either the Park District has in our master plan or a city or county entity has in theirs. And with that, I'll pass it off to Eric to speak about the congressional distribution.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. And yes, we did learn this morning that the criteria will be slightly changing to recognize quality of life and environmental sustainability, among the other things that Lisa mentioned. So we're excited about that information. In 2010, when we applied for the Tiger grant, it was very important for us to have our entire congressional delegation kind of working together as a team to help convince the Department of Transportation that our application was worth accepting and granting an award. This was really, it came out of a conversation that we had with DOT back then, where the person that we were speaking with said the secretary will never turn down a phone call from an elected member of Congress. So we did, with George Miller and John Garamendi's help, we did get the entire delegation behind our application. And we had projects originally in each of their districts. Eventually, we had to move some of the projects around just in terms of project readiness. So our goal is to find the sweet spot where the projects are meeting the criteria, we have the data, and hopefully we can have one at least in each of the legislative districts. It is important to note on this particular map that Mark DeSaulnay is fairly senior on the Transportation Committee and would have a fair bit of ability to communicate with the new secretary. And they're also pleased to report that South Bend, Indiana has a great trail network, so that also is a favorable outcome. So I think with that, I'll send it back to Katie.
Thanks. Right. So this is the project list that we've been referring to throughout this presentation. So just a couple of things. First of all, this list is not ordered in a priority because this list has been evolving over the last year. Things are being added and removed. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not by priority. And there's a mix of construction projects and preliminary engineering only projects. So about half of each. And I want to also note that project number 21 on this slide, the Contra Costa Canal Bancroft Overcrossing, is missing from your list in the board material because we added it in after board material was submitted. So we're at a total of 21 projects. The project, the estimated total project cost is based on either engineer cost estimates that staff had or from previous planning studies. So it is a little bit of a rough estimate. And the other thing would also like to clarify is that with the build grant, you can submit an application, so your project will either be considered urban or rural, and all of the projects that we have here and really the full East Bay Regional Park District is considered urban for our application. So we are submitting one application with several projects all considered urban. We are not sure exactly how many projects are going to be on the final list, probably less than 10. We anticipate the maximum award being no more than 25 million. Each state is limited to receiving 100 million. So That'll be a factor into the final list. And as I mentioned before, and that's been said here, is that we want to make sure that the projects on our list are the most competitive when looking at the 5 key grant criteria, and then internally seeing which projects are the most project ready, and that we have that 20% match funding requirement. So all of those things will come into play as we narrow down our list. And I think that's all that we have to say on that project list. And on the presentation, just reiterating our recommendation for today, which is to authorize a grant application to the United States Department of Transportation's Better Utilization Investments to Leverage Development, the BUILD grant program, for the preliminary engineering or construction of regional trails district-wide. And so at this time, I'm happy to take any questions. And again, thank you for the opportunity to present this to you today.
Thank you for the presentation. I'll entertain questions from the board. Questions or comments? Director Lane?
So would you talk again about what is exactly meant by readiness? Because they seem to be probably in different states of completion.
Yes, so for readiness, there's not necessarily like a hard and fast, every project has to have, be at 65% design necessarily. Ideally, the construction projects will have at least 30% design and have CEQA. But by readiness, I think what we really mean is can this project get done in the grant performance period of 3 years? And so that'll look different for a construction project versus one that's just preliminary engineering.
Okay, and so when you're doing an estimated total project cost, well, I'm looking at number 2, of course, Iron Horse Trail to Benicia Bridge. And so what part of that project does that apply to? Because I know the completed project is going to be quite a bit more than that.
Mm-hmm. I think, is Sean Dugan available?
Director Lane, Sean Dugan, Trails Development or Trails Program Manager. The phase that we're looking at for the Iron Horse Trail segment is for the preliminary engineering, so it would be CEQA and the preliminary design of where it will go. So you are correct that the construction and overall cost of the Iron Horse Trail from its current terminus to the Benicia Bridge will be quite a bit more expensive than what we're showing on this list. But for this phase, we're estimating about that cost.
Okay.
Director Waspy.
Yeah, Katie, congratulations on your promotion. And also, so I'm looking at projects in my ward, and so the Niles Canyon Trail, a couple of stretches of that, and the East Bay Greenway. I'm wondering if, so I'm trying to do the math, and I know the projections of those costs are much more than that. So does it help if when we're applying for these grants that I'm sure is Alameda County, I guess my question is Alameda County also putting in for a BUILD grant to supplement us or to work with us to do this? Because it would make total sense to do that, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I can answer your question. Maybe Lisa or Eric would have a better sense of what kind of partnerships might be available or communication with other agencies.
Yeah, Eric Feeler, Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs, Director Waspy, we are in communication with the transportation agencies for each county, Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and we'll be checking in with other stakeholders to try to build support for our BUILD application. Last time for Tiger, we had 83 letters of support, and a large part of that was having the political support. So we're starting with the political leadership and then moving into the agencies, and we're in the process of doing that. We just had a very positive meeting with Contra Costa Transportation Authority, and they were willing to lend their support to our to our application.
Director Coffey.
Eric, what were the projects that got Tiger funding?
See if I can remember all of them. Hercules, Intermodal, which you're well aware of.
Yeah.
And then a segment of the East Bay Greenway, the George Miller Trail in Martinez, the Alamo Canal undercrossing in Dublin Pleasanton, and then the extension of the Iron Horse Trail through the Hacienda Business Park in Pleasanton, and then preliminary engineering funding for the Pinole Shores Bridge. And I think that's it.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Director Lane.
Why don't you take me last? I've already talked some, so.
Director Corbett.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I also wanted to congratulate Katie and thank you very much for that presentation. On a couple questions. One, I'd like to know a little bit more about our engagement with regional partners and who that all entailed. I know you just did mention some of them, Eric, MTC, et cetera, and the other agencies. I wonder if we're also partnering with some of our transit agencies for some of the connectivity issues. So that's one question. And then my other question is going to be just about the, on the list, some of these are designated as having a preliminary, being a preliminary engineering project only. I'd like to know a little bit more about what that means and how we will move these projects forward to be ready for these grants.
Eric, would you like to field the first question?
Sure, Director Corbett. We have begun meeting with external agencies, but you do raise a very good point. Partnerships are taken into account in the application, so it will be important for us to meet with BART. That was a big piece of the Tiger grant, and also to speak with the other transit agencies about connectivity. So we will be doing that outreach as well. And then we should probably also be meeting with other community groups. I know that that was something that was important to the Tiger application. So we'll be working our way through that list and likely asking for board members to help us with some of those meetings and some of those processes.
Right.
And then Sean, would you like to address the second part of the question about preliminary engineer?
Thank you, Sean Dugan, Trails Program Manager. Yeah, so preliminary engineering is essentially getting the project to a point to where we can define a project description for it and perform CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, documentation of the impacts of it. So you're looking at about 30% design or so and a CEQA document in that phase. That leaves an additional final design, 65, 95, 100% design phase in the middle. And then, of course, then you have construction. So how we'll move them forward is a lot of these, well, we should mention that some of these projects were actually not the lead on. And so we would be working with the partners that we've identified for those to try to, you know, if awarded the funding, transfer the money and encourage them to move forward with those. And then with ours, we would look at what we can do in-house as far as design and CEQA goes, but we would likely be hiring consulting firms to manage the projects because of the short timeline that we will be under. We'll want to work as fast as we can to move them forward. I hope that answers.
It does. Thank you very much. And I would just say, I think we should also make sure that we invite the new head of the Department of Transportation to the Park District someday soon, or at the very least, if we find that he's coming to the San Francisco Bay Area, that we make sure that we're on his dance card.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments from the board? Director Lane?
Well, as I recall, in the Tiger grant, we did something like we gave our list of projects, a name like green transportation connections or something like that, which for projects like this was relatively snappy, and then did a brochure that I thought was very compelling. So are you working on some kind of naming like that again?
Creativity.
Yes. When we get to our sort of final project list, I'm sure we'll come up with a sort of very concise, compelling title for our project. And then we'll also be working with Public Affairs to put together a really nice looking package application. There's with this grant, there's not necessarily a form that we fill out. So we really get to present it in a really nice, beautiful way to showcase these projects.
Thank you, Katie.
So what's the due date for our presentation to be submitted?
The due date for the presentation for
the build for the build grant.
Oh, the application. We don't know yet. The Department of Transportation has to announce the funding opportunity by April 6th. So assuming we get at least 30 days to submit the application, after that, the application would be due as early as May 26th. If we get a little bit more time, it could be possibly sometime in June. All that said, the DOT could make their announcement earlier. So that's why we're coming to you now, just so we have authorization to apply and ready to go, just in case the Department of Transportation does make their announcement earlier or before that April 26th deadline.
And Katie, I'd just like to add in one additional date the board may be of interest is that the award announcement will come out in November of 2021. So just in terms of the full time frame of April announcement, June submission, November, we would get notice of award if awarded.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I believe there is there's no further questions or comments there. We're in line for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Director Eccles, is there a second? Director Waspy. Great, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, would you please take a roll call vote?
Yes, President Rosario. Director Coffey?
Aye.
Director Wieskamp?
Aye.
Director Lane?
Aye.
Director Eccles?
Aye.
Director Corbett?
Aye.
Director Waspy?
Aye.
And Director President Rosario?
Aye,
Yes, we are net
unanimous once again. Thank you very much. Great presentation and good luck to us as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I believe, how are you doing on time, Director Coffey? I know you have a hard stop coming up.
4:30, I'm okay.
Okay, good. Item number 4, board and staff reports. Actions taken by other jurisdictions.
President Rosario, Carol Victor, Interim General Manager. So there's one item in the board materials, and that is that the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors did approve a couple of improvements to the Iron Horse trail crossings in Alamo. And those improvements are expected to improve safety along the Iron Horse Trail.
Does that, do we
I think that's it. If you'd like a further, I can just further describe the improvements if you'd like.
Sure. I would be interested here.
Sure. So someone from ASD might need to help me out, but they're installing rectangular rapid flashing beacons with passive detection at Hillgrade Avenue and Las Trampas Road to replace the existing in-ground flashers, which are not highly visible.
Huh.
And then the crossing at Stone Valley Road West and Hemi Avenue will have existing actuators enhanced with the addition of passive detection systems to activate the flasher system's already installed at these crossings, and then yield lines will be painted on the pavement. I saw Brian pop up and he can describe what technology is briefly. That would be helpful.
Yeah, good afternoon, Brian Holt, Chief of Planning, Trails and GIS. Thank you very much. So this is, as Director Lane surely knows, the Iron Horse Trail through areas of Alamo and Danville can get very crowded and crosses a number of side residential streets. And so these are improvements to make for safer crossings. So whether it's a pedestrian actuated light, the sort of lights that flash when you push the button that lets you know that you're going to cross there, and then better signage and reflectors in the street to just to delineate where the trail is crossing the road to avoid potential pedestrian and vehicular conflicts.
Great.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Great. We'll move on to item number 5, General Manager's comments, and we have a staff presentation.
So thank you, President Rosario. So this afternoon, our Ecological Services Manager, Becky Tudin, will provide a presentation on harmful algae blooms and remediation efforts at Lake Anza and Lake Temescal. And then in the GM comments, we have listed the interpretive and recreation projects and operations projects throughout the district. And if the board has any questions about anything in that report, Jim O'Connor, AGM of Operations, will be available to answer those questions.
Good afternoon, President Rosario, members of the board. I'm very happy to be here. Becky Tudin, Ecological Services Manager, and I'm going to give an update on where we are in remediating harmful algal blooms at our district lakes. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone hear me? Sure. How's that? I'm not sure what you're seeing.
That looks fine.
Okay, so it's the full screen, not the notes?
Yeah, you're gonna have to open it all the way up on the left side is where your the smaller slides are.
There you go.
Well, no, there's your notes.
Okay, how about now?
Perfect.
It seems to change every time. So I'm just going to give an update on harmful algal blooms, also known as HABs. Just very quickly, I'm going to go through the basic background on cyanobacteria, also called blue-green algae. I'll just remind you of our overarching cyanobacteria management program, and then I'll get into a little more detail on what we've been doing in 2020. Even though we were in shelter in place, we actually undertook quite a bit at Lake Temescal and Lake Anza. And then I'll talk about next steps. So as most of you know, cyanobacteria, it's found worldwide. It's the largest and most important group of organisms. It produced a lot of the oxygen in our atmosphere, and it has a number of unique traits, including that it can release toxins, which if ingested or come into contact with our skin can cause health effects to both people and animals. And we know that it likes high nutrients, low oxygen, and warmer, slower waters. We still don't really know why only some of these blooms have these harmful toxins and others don't. We don't actually know what triggers a bloom. And then lastly, we really don't know what is a guaranteed treatment results, although we have some ideas about what works better than others. So since 2014, when the first bloom was detected in Temescal, the first bloom with toxins, hats off to Matt Grau and Hal McLean, featured in this photo, who really started working on what the Park District could do to manage these blooms for public safety. And as you recall, there are no regulations on recreational swimming and harmful algal blooms. There is guidance, But we really have to sort of make some of our own decisions and consult with the regulatory agencies and our partners on HABs. And through that, we've done a lot of signage and education and communication, and we've increased our monitoring dramatically. In particular, I'm going to show you some of our data that we've collected on nutrients. But we do regular visual analysis for these blooms as well as lab analysis, all of which we hope keep our people and animals in our parks safe. So the status of closures due to HAB. So these are our 4 reservoirs, and you'll see I circled the 100 days. That's roughly 3 months of closures. And you can see that we have a lot of years when we have over 3 months of closures due to these HABs. I want to point out that this map is year round and not just targeted on the swim season. You'll see that in 2020, we didn't really have a swim season, but still some of these lakes were closed. We've been focusing our efforts on Temescal, and you'll notice that in 2018 and 19, there were no closures, none. You also notice that Anza and Del Valle, where at the time we hadn't actually done any active treatment, didn't have any closures then. So we're going to take credit for Temescal, but I'm going to suggest that something else might have also been going on at that time. So just very quickly, our overall remediation strategy is to reduce nutrients. And nutrients come from 2 places, essentially. One is externally from the watershed, either through stormwater runoff, through broken sewer lines, and in some cases, groundwater can bring nitrogens into the lakes and reservoirs. In our case, most of the loading is coming from internal loading, and that's from sediments. And there's a chemical reaction in these reservoirs where when you have nutrients and you don't have oxygen, the nutrients actually become more available. And you'll see this can even happen in lakes that have mixing, where you have the water, the cold water from the bottom of the lake mixing during certain times of years, and that actually brings more nutrients up into the water column and can lead to a bloom. But our reservoirs, as you know, accumulate sediment because they put a dam up, and as the water from the creek flows in, the water slows down, drops the sediments. And in particular, Lake Temescal, where in 1868 it had 80 feet of depth, now it's closer to 15 feet at maximum depth. So our strategy is to focus on either reducing the overall nutrients, specifically phosphorus is limiting in our part of the world, or to add oxygen so that the chemical reactions are making it so that there's less nutrients available. So that was our overall strategy. And now to focus on what we actually did to remediate at our 2 lakes. You'll recall that basically starting in 2017, we started doing a lot of monitoring. We did harvesting of the vegetation to try to reduce biomass, and we actually applied alum, which is a binding agent, in 2017. And then in 2019, we did a dredging study that looked at the costs and methods and the design of what it would look like to do dredging. Dredging is the holy grail of treatment for cyanobacteria, and it would remove all of that internal loading of sediment. It's also very expensive. And these other efforts that we're doing are keeping us functional, but in long term, something like a dredging study is still needed. Sorry, a dredging project. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing in 2020, which is a nanobubbler pilot, and then continuing monitoring of the results of that pilot. So just very quickly, I want to show you this slide. I know it's only an update, but I want you to see that we are relying on science and collecting a lot of data on what's happening in our lake. So this is Lake Temescal. The orange line here is the northwest dock, which is the deepest point of the lake. And this yellow, this orange arrow is a spike in the phosphorus. And this was in 2017. The blue arrows are when we applied alum, which binds that nutrients. And you can see that from 2017 all the way to 2019, our phosphorus levels stayed very low and we didn't have any closures. Then in 2019, we started to see an uptick in that phosphorus again. So what we had hoped was a long-term binding of those nutrients. We saw in the summer of 2019 that we were starting to get more nutrients and likely more blooms. So we were contemplating an alum treatment, another alum treatment, but we were approached about a newer technology called a nano bubbler. And like other blue-green algae approaches, the idea was to infuse more oxygen into the water column so that there was less of the chemical reactions that favored the nutrients being available. And they move through a Brownian motion, which means they will disperse themselves evenly across the water column, sort of like smoke, instead of just bubbling straight up, which would cause more mixing. And so here's where we installed these nanobubblers at these two locations. And then we also had in situ monitoring, and this was installed in August of 2020. And there's two trailers. This is what the trailers look like. And we had a little educational signage there. And if you'll see from the results of the monitoring starting in this yellow arrow when it was installed in August all the way through to December, this bottom graph is the dissolved oxygen. And again, the more oxygen, the less the nutrients are available. And it started out at 0 oxygen. And as we added more of this nanobubbler technology, it went up. There was a little bit of a decline for some power outages and some mixing, but then basically starting in November, it's been pretty steady at 5 milligrams per liter. And we also saw something called the oxygen reductive potential, which is a way of measuring whether the chemical reactions are moving in our favor. And the higher they are, the better for us. And as you can see, it went up and stayed up throughout all of this activation of this technology. So we believe that this has been a success. And again, there's no way to guarantee that there won't be more algal blooms. And we're actually going to look at another alum treatment, but we're seeing that the oxygenation is leading to chemical reactions that should be making those nutrients less available. So the next steps that we're recommending and will be coming in front of the board next month is to continue that nanobubbler contract for 2 years with an option to purchase. And then we will do alum treatment in the spring just to hedge our bets. And we're hoping that that will give us a nice, clean swimming area at Lake Temescal. Moving forward, I think you'll recall from the dredging study that there's more sediment coming in than leaving. So over time, Lake Temescal is going to fill in. So we're making a recommendation with DECO to expand, and this is a conceptual drawing, the existing sediment basins that we have in Lake Temescal. By making them bigger, we can capture more sediment, and then ideally the net loading of sediment would be 0 into the lake. And then of course, we'll continue to look for these funding opportunities for dredging, either grants or capital funding or bond funds. So that's Temescal. And the next lake that we did a lot of work on this year, and hats off to DECO for running this project, was we installed an oxygenation system. Now, Anza is a different animal than Lake Temescal. It's highly stratified, which means the temperature, there's a difference in temperature gradient from the top to the bottom. And that also leads to stratification of other things like nutrients. It's eutrophic, which means it's very high in nutrients, especially phosphorus, and it has a native trout population. So you don't want to have a lot of mixing, because if you do, the colder water at the bottom where the trout seek refuge in the summertime, if it becomes mixed too early, then the trout will not be at temperatures that they like. And this internal loading of phosphorus is coming during the summer stratification. So in 2016, we consulted with Alex Horn, limnologist with UC Berkeley, and he recommended out of 17 treatment types to install a hypolimnetic oxygenation system. That's an HOS. And the idea is that you pump oxygen in to the lake just a few feet above the bottom of the lake, and then that oxygen will in a sense, aerate those sediments, and without mixing, add oxygen to that area that is anoxic. So here, what I'm going to show you is these bumps here in the red arrow. That's when the lake turns over, and as that water from the bottom comes up, it brings all of that nutrient-laden anoxic water, and then you get these spikes in phosphorus. So this was 2017, 2018, 2019. And here's where we installed the nanobubbler in July of 2020. And you'll see that at the deepest part of the lake that the phosphorus levels went way down, which was good. The problem was that when we added that oxygen, and you can see right here is where the system went in, the lake had been stratified. These are temperatures and these are different levels. And then we added the oxygenation system, and what it likely caused, along with some other, was heavy wind and lower temperatures, is we de-stratified the lake. So you can see that at every depth, it was the same temperature. And as a result of that, we mixed the lake, and that mixing caused a lot of cyanobacteria to form, because they were able to get that nutrient-rich water from the bottom. So here it is where it's basically de-stratified. It tried to stratify and separate, but now it's all the way up until December. All of the temperature is the same at every depth throughout the lake. Similarly, you see this with the dissolved oxygen concentration, the colors of the different depths, and you can see here that it's pretty stratified. And then most of the oxygen is the same level throughout. The blue is the deepest part of the lake. And you'll see here that it still has the lowest amount of oxygen, which with occasional dips in oxygen, which is not good. We don't want that. We want more oxygen so that the nutrients are less available. So basically what it means is we're going to have a longer time to bring Lake Anza into the fold of taking away those nutrients from being available. And I'm going to quote Ed Culver, our fisheries biologist, when he said it's still an all-you-can-eat smorgasbord for cyanobacteria because all of these nutrients are still available. And here we are. So the next step for Lake Anza is we're continuing this weekly monitoring and of the temperature, the oxygen, and the stratification, consulting with our limnologists, and monitoring the oxygen input that we can add to the lake. And then we'll consider if other treatments might be recommended for 2021 this spring. But ideally that we're putting in enough oxygen that given some time, we'll start seeing some improvements. A lot of people have been working on HABs since I've been here, as well as before I got here, both an internal work group, a lot of consultants and HABs gurus, as well as our regional and state water board partners. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Director Wieskamp.
Do we know if there's some other agencies that are using a like technique with this problem?
Yes, well, so the nanobubbler has been used by a lot of wastewater systems and agricultural ponds. And the reason we were able to pilot it was because they wanted to see how it would work in a recreational lake. And the HOS system, the system that we put in Anza, has definitely been used by many different water districts throughout the state and the US. So they are definitely well known, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Director Wasby, then Director Corbett. Dennis, you're muted.
Thank you, Becky. So great presentation. I find this incredibly interesting. So the thing I've been following this for a long time, and the things I've personally witnessed dogs dying from being in blue-green algae blooms. But, and you referred to some release of toxins cause health effects in humans. Has anybody recorded, I mean, has anybody human become ill, died, or whatever bad
You
reaction?
mean in the park district or just in general?
Well, no, in general, I know it's all over the United States, and this isn't a new thing for people around the world. It's kind of new for us, but is there evidence that this could really, really hurt a human being?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yes, absolutely. It's all about dosage and exposure and then how your body reacts and the intensity, but absolutely. And there have been a number of dog deaths.
Right.
And they're smaller, they tend to ingest more, they have a faster metabolism, they're covered in it typically. But yes, it can definitely be lethal to humans.
Yeah. Oh, Matt Grohl, Chief of Stewardship. I just wanted to add to that answer. When we look at the different, it really depends on the toxin we're talking about. And so we often don't have anatoxin A. We have documented that occasionally in very small doses. But if that toxin was in a higher amount, that is the one that can cause neurological impacts, the anatoxin A. But the microcystis, it comes from microcystin, is a form of algae. That toxin, microcystis, that has a more acute effect. So that would have more chronic, and that's where it's an issue more in drinking water and things. If it's in there or somebody's ingesting it over a long period of time, it can have more chronic effects to the liver and other things. So typically, and that's what we see more of that toxin typically, and that's one that also affects the dogs. But so with human ingestion, it's more of a long-term effect of that toxin. But anytime these can occur, if they're in these large doses, it could have those acute effects. So it really depends on the bloom and the type of toxin being produced for the specific human chronic effects. Most typically, we'd see a rash, is what you would see. Someone might see a skin dermatitis if you get exposed. But if you're really drinking the water, that's where they get the most potential for effects. And that's why dogs are most impacted too.
And then also in Temescal, it sounds like the nano bubblers are working, and you've had some success in the last few years. Is the city of Oakland still being recorded as depositing wastewater into our Lake Temescal? I mean, have they violated those rules anymore, or are they continue?
They have had spills that they have reported as required to, and we are working with them on making sure that we're notified and that there's a protocol. And then my understanding is the next step would be to work with them on how to help improve making sure that the spills are captured. That's where the conversations I've been involved with have gone. I don't know if Matt, you've been in more of those, if you want to add anything. No.
I mean, I think that was a good summary. I mean, we're in conversation and talking about options for future protective measures, but it's just in the really discussion phase and the exploratory conceptual phase. Is it technically feasible? I mean, they're starting to look at some of these options, but there are more long-term solutions than any short-term solution.
Yeah, I can add to that too. The city of Oakland's been doing a lot of work. They've been putting in a lot of sensors here and there, especially in their high propensity leak locations. And so these sensors are able to tell them their flow meters basically. And once they get a high reading, they know there's something going on. So they can respond to the outtake, and then they can also respond to where they think the leak's coming from. So they're making a lot of progress, and I think they have the same outcome that we want. No flow into Lake Temescal, but I think they've been doing a lot, and they're going to be doing more. So we'll see what their current budget how that's hit that department. Director Lane. Oh, you're on mute.
We're all having problems.
So we do want ANZA to be stratified, right?
Yes, I mean, it does mix different times of the year, but we accelerated that mixing before we wanted to.
Okay, so, and with the new system, it's not happening, right? So how long are we going to give the new system?
I'm sorry, say that again?
So how long are we going to give the new system?
Oh, well, you know, when we had Alex Horn look at it, he was estimating that it could take as long as 2 years of oxygen inflow to meet the demands of the sediment and the nutrients. I don't think it's going to take that long, but it will take a while. And if we do something like we did for Temescal, which would be to, you know, that something like alum that would bind the sediments on the surface, then we could accelerate how quickly the oxygen would work. But there's no guarantee at this point. It's going to take a little bit of time. And I think what happened was, by mixing, the oxygen bubbles were not supposed to cause the stratification, but something about the energy of the bubbles rising. We started it out higher at a high rate, and that probably was not the best idea.
Yeah, and the challenge is the time of year when that happened. I mean, it happened in the summer, and it got mixed, and so then it stayed warm, and so there wasn't as much ability to naturally re-stratify. So we expect as it warms up again, we'll have that natural stratification. We'll start to reestablish in the spring, early summer, and so it should be better this summer. And if we don't run that oxygen at that same higher level we started at, now I think we've got it dialed in a little better. It should maintain that stratification this year, and that'll help keep more of that oxygen at the bottom layer. But we'll see.
Director Corbett.
Thank you. I found this very, very interesting too, Becky. Thank you very much. I just have a couple of questions about the science that I don't quite understand. So does the oxygen, does it move the phosphorus around, or does it actually create a reaction so that the
creates a reaction
changes and goes away at some point?
Exactly. So basically the phosphorus will bind with the oxygen.
Okay.
But if there's no oxygen, it will detach and become more bioavailable.
Okay.
So by adding oxygen, there's chemical reactions that keep that phosphorus from being available. And in anaerobic conditions, the iron releases, the magnesium releases, and they all say, oh, here, I'm getting rid of my phosphorus. Go ahead and take it. So instead of PO4, I think it becomes P something. So don't quote. There's a lot of science involved in this, but I do know that it makes it become more available if it's anoxic.
So it eventually decreases.
Yes.
The level of nutrient in the water.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
That's good. And it sounds like that it'll take a while, but who knows? Maybe it'll work better or be less expensive than dredging, right?
Yes.
It's one of the remedies in it, in the science. The science is working and the experimentation is working. So that's really good. And then I have another question. I think I know the answer to this because I think you answered this for me before. There's ongoing testing of the sediment, right? Over the years, right? So we know the chemical profile.
Yes. To a certain depth and a certain location. Yes.
Have we seen any trends are as far as the mix of the chemicals? I'm just trying to figure out whether.
I don't think we have seen any trends. I mean, when we did the dredging study and we were looking for contamination to see, whether we were seeing any, and we were even looking if we were going to see lead or something because it's so near the freeway, and we didn't see any signatures that told us. We didn't even necessarily see any signatures of a fire, which we were a little surprised at.
Oh.
But the alum that we applied and the amount that the oxygen is working is really just the top of the sediment. In Anza, it went from 80 to 15. So you've got 65 feet of sediment there. And so we're just wanting to contain that top few inches. And I can go back and look at it. We test it every time we dredge, but that's really in the sediment basins. We haven't been testing the sediments, although I think that's part of our monitoring plan. We were going to wait after the nanobubbler and test the sediments. So I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if over time we can track whether various practices may eventually lessen the accumulation of the chemical compounds, like, practices in the use of fertilizers or other organophosphate or phosphorus materials are being kept out of the lake. I'm just wondering if there's ever going to be a trend that shows that.
Yeah, I will look. Again, we were focused more on what's already there as opposed to what's coming in from the watershed, because that's the biggest source right now.
Yes.
And in fact, sometimes when you get rainfall, when they're bringing in that colder water, you actually see the nutrients drop.
Yeah,
whereas
because
you
it
think,
dilutes it. Yeah.
You would think, oh, it's bringing in more sediments from the outside, they should go up, but that isn't what happens. And I could be the colder temperatures and the more oxygenation. I don't know, but
Yeah.
but I can look and see. I know that we did a recent study at Anza, and the sediments are very high in phosphorus.
Yes.
So, and I'll have to look and see how we will measure that change over time.
Yeah. Well, hopefully at some point with better practices, there'll be less and less phosphorus in that runoff. That's the hope anyway. All right. Thank you very much. Very interesting.
Any other questions? I have one. In regards to dissolved oxygen at Lake Temescal, I noticed the nanobubblers went in and you got a really good reading for dissolved oxygen all the way across throughout the year, but there was still a spike in, if I read that right, there was still a spike in algal blooms in 2020. Is that right?
So we in Temescal, we did still have closures, high levels, but actually those, we just deposted Temescal from having a HABs signage. So right now, it's good for HABs. So over the course of the summer, it was still high. And it was, we had a posting up, but now there's no blooms happening there.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just curious if the I was thinking if the dissolved oxygen was good, but you're still getting a spike in algal bloom. What happened?
So again, our hope is, in Temescal, we're not seeing that spike. The phosphorus and the oxygen are staying at a good level. And over time, the algal blooms have decreased. So in August, we were having blooms and now we're not. Now, with more rain, there's a lot of things happening. So I would say all signs are that Temescal is moving in a favorable direction. And especially if we also add alum, I would bet on it. But, Anza's a bit trickier, so that's going to take a little longer. And we don't want to pump up the oxygen because that's what created the mixing. So we have to be patient and just hope that the lower levels of oxygen closer to the bottom without causing that mixing are going to work over time. Or look at something else, like maybe alum. I haven't heard that alum is such a great thing in a deeper lake, but I don't know. We're going to have to look into it.
Yeah, it's interesting that, dredging is supposedly the gold standard for Temescal, but Lake Anza is pretty deep. So we're still having the problem. So it's pretty.
Yes, and interestingly enough, it's not as highly developed a watershed as Temescal. Right? It's more forested and single family homes as opposed to freeways. And so, but I don't know, maybe the sediments in that clay enriched soil that are,
Yeah. So are the nanobubblers still operating?
Yes, they are.
Okay, good. And then did we ever find our mystery E. coli leak on the west side on the beach?
Not that I know of. I haven't seen a spike in E. coli. We haven't been monitoring that over the winter, but we will start back up again and look. What President Rosario is referring to is that we were seeing some unusual spikes just at one portion of the beach, and we couldn't figure out what that was from. could be ducks. You know, we don't know.
Yeah, well, we did several investigations and they all proved that that wasn't a potential source. So we're still not sure. It could have been a natural source, but we just were uncertain. So we looked at a lot of the things like the lift station and some other lines, and they did some TVing of lines, and everything looked to be in good shape. So we're not sure. But we'll keep watching it this year.
Right.
Oh, and then as far as the nanobubblers go, I can just give you a preview. We are planning to bring at probably the next meeting, but possibly next one, board material to extend that rental contract and to look at making that more of a permanent solution over the next couple of years. So we have more certainty with that operation. So that'll be coming before the board, I believe, at the next meeting.
Great.
And the nice thing about the nanobubblers is you can move them. So we could put them in another reservoir if we wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in previous reports, the current nanobubbler system that at Temescal is relatively is undersized for that size lake. Is that correct?
They had recommended that 3 sizes for that would have been better, but when we go up to that next 2-year contract, we are going to go to the larger size, so 2 will be sufficient.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that report.
Thank you.
Director Corbett?
Can I ask just one last question? Something came to mind. Will we ever have the data to allow us to predict in advance if there'll be a bloom, or are there just too many different variables?
I haven't heard anybody say that they are confident we can do that. I mean, they've started to do genetic testing, but you know, these bacteria reproduce so quickly that you can get 1,000 generations down. And so that's not very helpful to say, oh, this one has the genetic and this one doesn't. I mean, that hasn't worked for us to look at that. So I haven't heard that we've been able to predict blooms with certainty, no.
And yeah, I think we're getting it with the more information we're getting, though. I mean, with the phosphorus and the sediment data, I think in a few years, if we keep, I mean, assuming we may this may all work, we may have control with these solutions. But if we start to see these ones, we'll get a sense of more what the trends are within that reservoir since we've been doing this monitoring. And we might start to be able to see phosphorus ranges or even temperature ranges that are causing it. We haven't been able to identify that yet, but since we're continuously monitoring, we've been doing it for a number of years now. We're starting to get a really good data set with both of these. So we may be able to predict some for these water bodies. It's often individual to the location. When Becky's saying it's hard to predict it, there aren't good national standards, but it's often local to a water body in specific. So we might be able to identify trends as we keep doing this monitoring.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Keep up the good work. Item number 6, board committee reports. Anything to report from Natural and Cultural Resources? I think we just had that presentation.
We did. Thank you, Dean. Unfortunately, I got to sign off now, but
yeah, no problem.
Very good meeting. Very good meeting today.
Excellent. Thank you. Anything else from the Legislative Committee?
Not that I'm aware of. We just didn't move it along.
Okay. Are there any, then we go to item number 7, announcements from closed session.
President Rosario, there are no announcements from closed session.
Excellent, thank you. And now we're at board comments. This is our time. I'm going to go, whoever's on closest to me on the screen. Director Wieskamp, are you available?
I'm available. I haven't got law. It's been a day, but hey, the sun is shining. I talked to my niece in Texas and their power keeps going on and off. And I said, it sounds like our wildfire season. Theirs is cold.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful I'm where I am. Believe it or not, I've still been giving out calendars here and there. And I've had great success by say, look at the back page inside of the map and see all the parks and go try Judge John Sutter Seashore Park. And people are really excited about that location. So I hope they're all doing it. We had GM meetings on the 9th and the 11th. I had a special meeting with Nancy Rodriguez, and we talked about Tesla and their continued work on working with the legislature and hopefully the governor to protect Tesla. And that's it.
Great. And then Director Corbett and then Director Waspy.
I'm not quite ready, but I'll try to read this off my phone.
I can go to Waspy, give you next like a little extra time.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
As you know, on Wednesdays, I attend EOC. So any Wednesdays that we've had. We had executive committee meeting on the 4th. Oh, on the 5th. And I know Dee, you had this great fun too. Had an opportunity to represent the Park District in meeting with Doug McConnell, who's doing a series on access to shoreline parks. And I have to say, it's one of the most fun things I've done as a board member. It was a beautiful day, and I had the opportunity to talk about all the great work that we're going to be doing at Tidewater. So that was really great. Then I rushed home for the Finance Committee meeting midday that same day. And then, let's see, as you know, we've had some other special closed board meetings on GM transition. So there was one on February 9th. EOC was on the 10th. There was another special closed session meeting for GM transition on the 11th of February. Let's see, hope you all had a nice Lincoln's birthday on the 12th and a nice Valentine's Day and a nice Washington's Day. And today is the 16th. So that's what I've been doing. Thank you very much.
Great. Director Waspy and then Director Lane.
Thank you. I spent February 5th at the McCosker property, seeing all the great work that was done out there. It's an amazing project. If you haven't been there, go see it. And I hiked around the hills there. It's beautiful. Everything's getting green. I attended the GM meetings that we've been having quite frequently. Gosh, that's it. I did want to point out Director Rosario very kindly and generously offered up one of our great African-American employees that worked for the Park District, Larry Dunn. And Larry worked on my crew with me for about 10 years. Fine district employee. It was his father, Austin Dunn, who was the gentleman who worked for the Park District, and a contractor was working. It was up at the golf course. And he lifted the bed of his dump truck. It hit an electric wire. And Austin Dunn very selflessly wanted to rescue this person and attempted to rescue him and was electrocuted. So there is a plaque up there for Austin Dunn, and Larry Dunn tells the story. He was a very, very young person at that time, and that was the loss of his father, the only breadwinner in his family. And you know, Larry came to work for the Park District and worked for over 30 years, possibly close to 40 years, and retired. So it's a great story, Dee, and thank you for bringing it up.
Director Lane.
Yeah, it seems like it hasn't been that long since we saw each other. I did go to the my first finance committee in a while, and always jam-packed with information, and we went over what the work plan will be for the year. Then I attended the Pleasant Hill State of the City address, and I got a little bonus there. You know, the Chambers of Commerce set these up, and sometimes you get some special insights. But one of the things that I also did was a special report from Zach, last name I can't remember, who's chair for the Pleasant Hill Park and Recreation District. And that Park and Recreation District was created before the city of Pleasant Hill and includes a larger area than Pleasant Hill. And he went over a lot of the activities that they were doing and attempting to do last year. And it was really very interesting to see what they were doing. Very similar to our issues, but of course they do so many more different kinds of programs. And he was very optimistic about what they were able to provide. And I was happy to see that. Then the other two meetings were GM related meetings on February 9th and February 11th. And I have been getting out in the parks, hiking more than I have in the past. And I went to Sycamore Valley Open Space and went all the way up on the top where you get these great views of Mount Diablo at one end and you could see the Ohlone at the other. And then also to Las Trampas. And all of these parks are really full of people. It's not tapering off the way I had thought it might. And even at Las Trampas, when it was not this really sunny weather, a lot of people and a lot of families there. So I'm sure they're looking forward to spring, and we're going to have our hands full because people have discovered us. So that's it. Thank you.
Director Eccles. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so let's see. Attended the first board finance meeting of the year and my first board finance meeting ever. So that was exciting. I really very excited to dig into all of those issues. And then, of course, we all attended 2 special closed sessions on GM transition on the 9th and on the 11th. On the 11th, I also attended the liaison meeting for the Unified Command in response to the Chevron oil spill. And let's see, I also attended earlier in the month the Alameda County Democratic Central Committee meeting, and then have been enjoying this warmer weather to get out and do even more walking, and actually walked around Lake Anza recently with my daughter and husband, and my 7-year-old was quizzing me about what are we doing about the blue-green algae, and I'm not kidding. And fortunately, I had already seen Becky's presentation in the Natural Resources Committee meeting, so I was able to reassure her about the work we are doing, and also the nano bubbler at Temescal. So that was exciting. So anyway, so thank you, thank you, Becky, for your presentation, and yeah, that's my report.
Great. And last but not least, let's see, after the board meeting on the 3rd, I attended a meeting with Eric Fueller and Lisa Baldinger, and we talked about the legislative community outreach programs that they're coming up very soon in an attempt to find out, our surveys. We all know the people that respond to our surveys are people that use our parks. Now we're looking to try to see how do we reach people that aren't getting to our parks, and how do we get them out there? So there's going to be 3 sessions, and I think I'm really looking forward to it. And then on the 4th, attended the executive committee meeting, and we had a great presentation from the Regional Parks Foundation, their annual report. And then on the 4th, I attended the Contra Costa Mayors conference, and their de-escalation training is going quite well countywide. Out of they're trying to take police out of mental health situations, and out of 10,000 psychiatric holds in 2020, 10,000, they were able to have the mental health team go out and service at least 4,000 of those and follow up with them. So it's just the beginning program, but hopefully they can find the funding to increase staffing to get to the rest of those 10,000 holds. So it's quite that number alone was just phenomenal. Now I was going to ask our police chief if the de-escalation training, if they haven't, I know we do it. I was wondering if they had looked at the program that Contra Costa County is doing. It sounds phenomenal. And then on 2/5, I was with Doug McConnell at Judge John Sutter Regional Shoreline, and we walked from the parking lot, and you should have seen you know how there's kind of a little bit of a rise, you know, and I was kind of worried because guys carrying, Jason's carrying his camera and Doug's walking along, we're walking along, and then this is this going to get any better? Because you know, in the beginning, but when you get to that rise and I see the horizon, and there's like, you should just seen their faces light up. It was just priceless. And they got really excited. So it was a beautiful day. And of course, Doug McConnell, he's such a treasure, not only to the regional parks as a friend, but just to the community at large for what he's done. And then on the 9th, attended the closed session for the GM selection process. And then also on 2/9, I met with Jim O'Connor and Tiffany Margalisi. They got to hear about the new equestrian center vendor at the Anthony Chabot Equestrian Center. Our former vendor there left quite quickly, and we were able to find a new vendor. And I'm really happy to announce that it's a woman of color, relatively young, but enthusiastic. I think she's going to be the first woman equestrian center concessionaire that we've had that's a woman of color, and I'm really excited about it. And then I'm really excited that Jim and Tiffany were able to find someone with that potential. And then also Tiffany announced that she and finance worked together to develop a streamline the CMF process so that concessionaires can get paid on a timely basis. I'm very excited about that. That's something that's been going on for a while, and I'm glad to see that Tiffany and Jim are working well together with finance and getting that done. Kudos to both. And then on the 10th, attended the Alameda County Mayor's Conference. There was a presentation by the John Kaufman and Susan Piper about the Wildfire Mitigation Joint Powers agreement they're looking for a countywide solution to wildfire mitigation. It was well received by the mayors. And then Mayor Lily May highlighted the fact that hate crimes against Asians in Fremont, Oakland, and San Leandro are unprecedented in numbers, and just to be aware and stand up and because it's not good. We all need to take care of each other. And then on 2/11, I attended the closed session again. And then also that evening on 2/11, I attended Lafayette's State of the City. And the new mayor, got to see the new mayor, Susan Kendall. And it's nice to see that they're going through their diversity, equity, and inclusion process as well. And of course, they have that in the face of I don't know if you've heard of the Cotulla overpass, but I guess Trump supporters have been having protests there for 6 months. And that's been ongoing, but it's good to see that they're pursuing their diversity and equity and inclusion trainings. And then on the 12th, that was today, I met with Carol this morning, and then here we are at the board meeting. Voila. And that
flows together.
Yeah, here we are. Okay, without any other further comments? And then I guess we are close to adjournment. And I just wanted to bring up that Dennis and I both started with a great, our first supervisor at Don Castro, Coolidge Douglas. Great man. And he's one of the, I call him a gentle giant, basically. He was just tall. And I just remember him pulling me out of the sun in the days before we were doing, we had weed eaters, we had weed whips, and he said, come on out of the sun. It's too hot. But he was one of those great characters, great Black gentleman, and it just reminded me of so many of the old Black employees that contributed to the Park District, and he was one of them. And it was a nice memory of him too. So let's adjourn in memory of our past Black employees and in honor of our current Black employees. And I hope we continue to grow and to continue to build the bones of this great system we have here. So thank you all very much. And we are adjourned.
Thank you, Dee.